this morning. They just released one saying Bernie Sanders' ideas are not too bold, they are too facile.
Uh-huh. That was the release this morning. That was their quasi endorsement of, or was it an explicit endorsement of Hillary?
That's the title for their second one. The first one was his ideas are fiction, and now this new one is they are not too bold, they are too fossil.
Okay.
Facile.
Give us both of them. Merge them together.
So basically arguing that his health, because they just basically use it as a piece to promote that Vox article that came out about that Clinton staffer who said that Bernie's plans would cost $1 trillion more a year than he says they are, which has in that Vox article he didn't say what part of the plan would be inflated so much to cause that. He said I did a study and it would cost double what Bernie says, so it's bad.
Right. And I hate to interrupt you, but I want you to be explicitly clear to the people who are listening. So Vox actually quoted it in the beginning of the article as a study from Emory University, right? But unpack who the person really was and their position, or maybe not if you don't know their exact position, but their relationship to the Clintons.
Yeah, the head of the study and the one that brought it to Vox was a former Clinton staffer, Bill Clinton staffer. I don't have his name here because I don't have the Vox article with me. I just have the Washington Post one. But essentially saying that it would, instead of costing $500 billion, it would cost $1.5 trillion per year, setting just mass inflation of prices that Bernie missed, and then they base in the Washington Post article they just went back to Bernie's just dreaming about a European model and the like, and it's much shorter than their first one this morning, and was just trying to cover their bases by repeating themselves. So I actually got bored with it pretty quickly and saw this thing by The Nation instead, who endorsed Bernie last week, but talked about how both Bernie and Coates are missing the mark, and what their solution for the middle is actually what I've been thinking for a very long time. Of like, I just feel like you, me, and the Progressive Army should just go down to like one of the Bernie offices and just say, this is what you guys need to do about race. They're saying both Coates and Bernie are missing they're both on both sides of the spectrum and are saying the other one needs to recognize the other, when realizing the middle is The Nation talking about black oppression and saying that Bernie is focusing too much on class while Coates is all on race, is that you have to bring in, which is kind of what they're both saying, that to teach the white working class that not only do they benefit from white privilege, which is what the Black Lives Matter and black activists talk about a lot, but they also suffer, particularly working class whites, suffer under a white privilege system economically. They, even when they're poor, they still have the social benefits of being white, but their oppression is just as integral to a white privilege system economically as black oppression, because they are kept slightly above blacks economically, so they feel like they're above someone. I like when Bernie talked about how Mississippi and other southern states have some of the lowest white wages of anywhere in the country. They're kept slightly above blacks and other minorities, so they feel like they're middle class, when in reality money is being sucked out of the white working class just as much as it's being sucked out of the black working class, and they use either wedge issues or the fact that when blacks try to talk about raising themselves up, the power structure makes white working class people feel like that's a threat to themselves, and that it's created this perfect machine that's worked for centuries. And Bernie has alluded to that in a general election. That's something he'd like to talk about as part of a 50 straight strategy, going to conservative arenas and conservative spaces and talking about this, but he hasn't articulated it well, and he hasn't articulated in a primary to black people that that's what he wants to do. And I think he should, in a meeting between black activists and him, that should be a definite part of the conversation, is that I intend, because it's no secret that Bernie's comfort zone is working class whites. He turned a conservative rural state like Vermont into a liberal bastion by getting working class whites to trust him. Like, it's probably, we're never going to agree on social issues to these Vermont farmers. He's just like, you don't oppose gay marriage. I've supported it my entire life. I support a woman's right to choose. I'm being honest with you. That's just how it is. But I will fight to make sure that Big Agro never comes into this state to destroy your livelihoods that you've had for generations. And that trust was built. And what I think Bernie misses is that in this primary, in order to get black votes that have been so skeptical of him, he needs to explain, I am not a black savior, and I may not even be a black champion, but what I can do is to go to white working class people and understand the system that they become a part of when they always try to use race as a distraction from their own problems and how both black and white are oppressed under the crony capitalist system.
Now let me jump in there. Let me jump in there and start at the top and work my way through what you said, and then I'll throw it back to you, and then everyone else can chime in. First of all, it's Kenneth Thorpe. Kenneth Thorpe is the guy from Emory University who did the study that Vox quoted, saying that it's going to cost a single payer system. Bernie Sanders' single payer healthcare system is going to be $1.1 trillion a year more expensive. Kenneth Thorpe is a former assistant secretary, deputy assistant secretary underneath Bill Clinton's cabinet, and he had a major role in coordinating President Clinton's healthcare reform proposals. So he is a part of the Clinton machine. At a bare minimum, they should have given that disclaimer in that very first paragraph. But Vox, to me, has unloaded and kind of played their card. Right, they're starting to reveal exactly where they are. Like, we were counting on Vox to be this unbiased source to give us very factual numbers.
The liberal policy walk. That's what we thought it was going to be.
And all we needed you to do was to give the numbers. You're the Ezra Klein. You're the policy wonk. That's what we liked you for on MSNBC. That's what we subscribed to you on Vox for. But in their very first paragraph, they lay this out as if it was a legitimate study based on fact without any bias. But I think most of their readers would have appreciated to know that the person who did this study is a part of the Clinton machine. So that's number one. Number two, I want to push back it's not even a pushback. I think what you're saying about Bernie making it clear, actually strike that. Let me start over. What you're describing in terms of the benefit that white people get, but also the detriment and the way they suffer underneath white supremacy, is something that James Baldwin, the author, said in a debate, in the Cambridge debate with William F. Buckley. And he described it as he's sitting in line at the Western Union, and there's this white lady who's waiting, who's getting rude with him and treating him like he's not anything but an animal. But the reality of it is that she is economically just as strained and tortured by this white supremacist system as he is. But so long as she feels like she has that one extra edge because she's white, at least she's not black, you know, then she's not even aware that her suffering is not due to that black person that she hates. Her suffering is due to the white supremacist system that causes her to hate, that teaches her to hate, so that she can ignore the reality of the source of her qualms and her pain and her economic woes. So what you're saying, I don't know which article you brought that from, or if that's something that you came up with, but that's 100% based in, I mean, that's so factually true. And it's something that I feel that Bernie Sanders has alluded to, but he hasn't hammered, right? I agree with you in this, that he hasn't hammered this, and that if he came down that third way in terms of showing very strongly, unequivocally, just like outright showing that this same economic problem, this economic paradigm that everyone who is middle class and poor suffer underneath, right? The working poor and the poor and the impoverished suffer underneath, is the same white supremacist system that makes the poor white person think that they're better than the poor black person.
Yeah.
And if he hammered that, then I think you're 100% right. I think he would resonate a lot more with, I mean, my God, if he went to black churches with that, oh, sweet God, if he could ever get a speech at a black church saying something like that, that would change the game.
Yeah, I think he should do more than allude to it like he has so far. It's like, think of how quickly the black vote would start turning if he started saying what he's alluded to directly, just went at it.
Yeah.
And it was a Nation article. I put it in the chat, in the Hangout. But I've had the idea and thought for a while, but they set it out perfectly. It's what I think he has to do, and I don't know if we just need to go in there. You guys really need to start pushing the question of race within class. Like, it's not race versus class or class versus race. they're both intertwined, and they both create this system that has been built to prevent us from overturning it using this divisiveness. And the problem is that even now, those working class whites, because the inequality has accelerated so quickly, that
Right.
even they feel something is off, and they're not sure why. They're confused. They're going. A lot of them are going to Trump because he's saying something that kind of feels like this. Maybe Trump gets something. Something feels off, and I think Bernie can explain to him what that feeling really is. Is that the white power structure that has caused you to be suppressed? They've gotten cocky. They've
Let-
they've accelerated the rate of inequality so quickly that even now you're starting to wake up to it.
You know what? Here's something that he should really say, because this is, I believe this to be 100% true. The white elite system no more cares about a poor white person in the trailer park than they do a poor black person in the hood. They would treat you, that maybe the police would treat you differently, maybe the person in Walmart would treat you differently, maybe the teacher in school would treat you differently, but the people, the 1%, they would not. They will see you exactly as the same vermin as they see black people in the hood. Now, maybe he's not going to say vermin, but if he needs to express it from that position with that type of passion. Let me grab this caller, because I have the phones are lighting up, and I think they have a comment on this. Caller, you're live on the. Put it together. Progressive Army. We need to get word over to Bernie Sanders, man. He needs to really step it up. And there's quite a few things that they really should do differently. No campaign is perfect. There's some missteps that they have, and I think this is one of them. So social media is just as good as anything else. You know what we need to do as Progressive Army? All these writers we have over here, we need to write it out. We need to piece it together for them and just hand it to them. Let's deliver it to them.
Let's give our own editorial board.
Yeah, exactly. Solomon, thanks for that piece. We're going to move over to PJ, but before we do that, I want to grab this caller. Hang on one second. 607, you're live on.